Here we go. So thanks for the opportunity to speak today. My name's John, and I'm going to be talking a little bit about fair game, a little bit about myself and my opinions on inclusion. I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of this land, and also I'd like to acknowledge the Nyungamata and Garimata language groups from the area of Port Hedland, which is where I live at the moment, and I'd also like to acknowledge any Aboriginal people who are here in the room today, and welcome everyone else to the presentation. So today, what am I going to do? I'm going to offer you some personal insights and reflections into my life and some of my thoughts about my work. I'd like to possibly reflect on my definition of inclusion as a health practitioner. I know we might have people in the health service industry and people who are also health practitioners here today. I'd like to take the opportunity to outline Fair Game, our organisation, what we do, our mission, our vision and our achievements. But I'd also like to take the moment to reflect on the process of inclusion and my personal reflections on our organisation and also on our growth. I think it's really important to acknowledge where we've come from and think about that full dimension of inclusion. I'd also like to discuss how sport can actually be related to social inclusion. While some people may think the abilities-based nature of sport and fitness can actually exclude people, I'd like to use Fair Game as a model of a way in which we can think about different ways of including people through sport and fitness. And because of the theme of today's event, I'd also like to discuss community partnerships and how we've used them and leveraged them, because I think that's why we're all here today. So when I go through this, hand up if anyone is working in health or has worked in the healthcare field here at the moment. So pretty good range of people. And inclusion for me as a doctor in my everyday work really is about making sure that patients have a voice, that the patient inclusion, the patient perspective is included in their health decisions. And in Port Hedland, it's something we're really trying to work hard on. And we have meetings every week with cases, we have liaison throughout the emergency department. And then when I was reflecting on what inclusion actually means for me, I came up with this statement, and for everyone it's different, but this is what I'd like to structure my talk around and mention how Fair Game's tried to pursue this throughout our organisation. So it's an environment that allows any individual to bring their whole self into the conversation, achieving uninhibited equal contribution from all members of society. And that's something that I sort of have been reflecting on over the past few years and certainly reflect on through my work. So let's start the story. I grew up here in Western Australia. I went to school in Mount Lawley, and when I was 5 years old, I had a rock museum, and I invited all my friends around to come and look at my rock museum. And they came around and they looked at these brown rocks and they said, wow. And from that day forwards, I knew that I liked giving to the community and being involved in other people's lives. It was just something that, I don't have a rock museum now, you'll be pleased to know, but I live in a place where there are a lot of rocks, so I suppose it's fitting. And after this, I went through school, went through uni, did a couple of different things overseas, and then I thought I wanted to challenge myself with my intern placement. So I chose Charles Gardner Hospital, and then that rotates to Port Hedland, and this is the old hospital in Port Hedland. And when I was in Port Hedland Hospital, I had what I call my tin can moment. And it was, despite travelling around the world, volunteering in Africa and other places, it wasn't until I was in Hedland with a man who was 18 years of age, and he had obesity hyperventilation syndrome, which is where someone has, so much extra weight on that they can't stay awake because the oxygen levels and the carbon dioxide levels in their blood are making that person fall asleep. And we are putting what's called a CPAP mask, which is a mask that helps blow air into someone's lungs to put oxygen levels up in their brain, onto this man. And before I was getting the mask ready and sealing it on his face, I looked out the window or the ambulance door of the hospital and I saw some kids. So this man was 18. These kids were probably 8, and they were kicking a tin can, rubbish around the forecourt of the hospital. And I just sort of thought, what has happened in those 10 years in terms of the lifestyle decisions that this patient has made that have led him to be from A to B. And I thought, that's a real shame. And it struck me that that's where the health inequality in this state lies. It's the ability for people to independently make healthy lifestyle decisions. And I thought, I was very aspirational. I thought, let's change this. So I phoned 4 friends and we started collecting recycled sports equipment to drive essentially from Albany to Kununurra, stopping at communities in which we'd worked with or which we had liaison with along the way. And their model, the idea was that we could donate recycled sports equipment that would give people the tool to be able to make those healthy lifestyle choices. And that was where the concept of Fair Game, which is our organisation's name, came apart. And over the time, we realised we were kind of onto something, because everyone had worthless items of sports equipment in their garage. I'm sure some of us probably here do. And those items, not only are they, a use of carbon and energy, but they're collecting dust and they're not being used. And how could we actually change that? So the donations kept rolling in. And so we moved, and my reflection of this is we actually moved into that kind of physical inclusion space. So at that point, we started using volunteers who are doctors, nurses, teachers, generally involved people in the community who wanted to help. And we were physically in strange situations in communities, in service agencies, and we were starting to put different people together. And then we started to think, well, how could we actually try to make this vision? We had a clear vision and a clear mission, but we didn't necessarily have that structure yet. And so we started using our existing skills as health practitioners to implement and integrate messages of health into the recycling of sports equipment. So what we were doing is we'd find that we'd donate football boots and we'd run a football game, but then after the football game, everyone was tired, and what could we do? Well, that might be a great opportunity for us to use our skills for dental hygiene, hand hygiene, talking about what food resources are available and how we can eat a little bit healthier so that we can impart everyday access to those healthy lifestyle choices. And so I think we probably started moving at this stage away from just physically being in the area to starting to think about a bit of functional inclusion. We would donate equipment that would allow people to participate in the community, and then we would donate healthy community packs. So we currently, for every participant, gets a water bottle, a set of hygiene equipment that stays in the classroom so that they'll be able to continue making those lifestyle choices. And then as time went on, we realised that we really needed to offer more opportunities for the participants to engage with programs that might be more meaningful and might be more accessible for them. So Fair Game moved away from doing things such as competitive sport to doing sports-based games where everyone can be a team leader, where everyone who's in that community can participate, where it's not necessarily score and goal-based, it's enjoyment and outcome-based. And so we started training young people. And you can see in this photo, there's a couple of our volunteers in a remote area. And we started running what's called the Fair Gamers training program through our academy. And every year, or twice a year actually this year, we've got a training application open at the moment, if anyone is interested. We run a day of training and we train in our 3 or 4 core programs that allow young people to connect with each other and then to go and connect with community and volunteer in a really meaningful way across our state to help our vision, which is for a fit and healthy Australia. So in terms of our achievements, I just want to put a couple of numbers up here, and I'll talk to them, and then I'll go through a bit of a reflection about some of our community partnerships and how we've developed that and how we're moving into the social inclusion space. So the first one is 30,000, which is the number of equipment items we've donated so far. And if you think about the cubic metres, that's a whole lot of stuff that hasn't gone to landfill. It's a whole lot of things that have gone to community and allowed people to participate in sport and fitness, and I think that's really the sustainable element of Fair Game. 3,000, so that's the number of participants we have per year across Western Australia, across all ages, all abilities, all locations. We currently have volunteer coordinators in the Pilbara, the Kimberley, here in Perth as well. 200, this is a really special number for me. So this is the number of Fair Gamers in our organisation. We have a very positive organisation culture with strong values, and every one of these people are important to myself, and I think it's important to also recognise the diversity within this group and the inclusion of other people, which I'll talk about later. And then 4, this is the future for Fair Game. So in the last sort of 9 months, we've trained 4 Aboriginal people who have come on board in terms of our actual organisation itself. So whilst we mentor participants in remote areas, we're seeing an increase in the diversity and the inclusion of other people within our organisation. So that's our sort of first step in this last year of people who've just discovered Fair Game and want to get involved. So reflecting on opportunity and positive partnerships, I'll go through some of our programs now and the structure in which I think they've been able to add value. So the first one of which, and how we've partnered with other organisations. The first one is our Recycle and Donate program. This is where we donate those 30,000 items. We have allowed anyone to access it via online request form. We work with communities. So what we do is every 12 weeks, we email out, and you're welcome to be on the email list. If you have a sports club, say, look, hey, we get donations from people in Perth or around the state. What do you need? What can we donate to you? So it might be in Wyndham, there was a netball team that wanted shoes because they couldn't participate in a competition. So we donated a whole team of shoes who actually were allowed and able to participate in sport because of that. We have a blue bin collection system. So down the bottom, you can see we work strongly with UWA and a number of other local governments, including City of Subiaco. And we have these bright blue bins that people can go and donate their equipment to. But then where does that equipment go? Well, as you can see from this Instagram post, we get the wish list items in, and this is how we're really able to positively partner with communities and make change. The second one I'm going to talk about in a moment is our wellness walkabout, and I think this is really growth from our organisation and an understanding about the concept of diversity, inclusion, and involving our participants as equals with our organisation. So I'll talk about that in a moment. But just before then, I'd like to talk about our Aboriginal corporation partnerships. So we do work with a range of corporations across Western Australia, including IBN in Headland. We work with Edmund Rice here in Perth, and we also work with Gandua up in the Kimberley. And what we do is we partner with them to find out and to ask them when and how can we help, rather than saying we'd like to come and do this. So we know that in the Kimberley we help in the October school holiday period when some of the Gandua support workers might be having some days off after the big carnival, and that's when Fair Game can really plug those gaps and help our mission and grow our community support. In terms of IBN, we have something called the Wellness Walkabout, and this is a A3 framed flip book. It's Australia's only Aboriginal language yoga program, and it's an amazing, amazing program that allows people to discover new abilities about themselves, and it also allows people to not only learn language, and it might be for us learning other languages, but engage in sport or a slightly different sort of sport and recreation. So this is translated into 3 highly endangered languages, as they're called. One of them only has 30 native speakers. So it's about a girl or a boy who goes walkabout and sees a Dreamtime animals, and the stories are written in partnership with communities. So we go to one or two of our favourite communities and we say, what animals do you like, kids? And you always get zombies, giraffes, elephants. You kind of have to rein it in a little bit and at least produce some animals that will have a local language. So we try and get those, and then we go and ask some yoga instructors to design some poses and some sequences that are culturally appropriate. So, a lot of downward facing dogs and things that may not necessarily be appropriate in communities. So, where are the seated positions that we can use? And then we put it all together in a storybook. So it's sitting at the front, and you turn the pages, and then there'll be the local word for, say, kangaroo, and then the instructor, who might be a fair gamer or might be a participant, comes and reads the story on the back, and everyone does the pose, and then the story goes on and you change over. But I think this is a great opportunity to highlight the community partnership for this program. I did some academic research on it when I was living in Derby, and I did it every week with a class of year 3-4s, and we showed some scientifically relevant improvement in conduct and mood disorders for some of these children. So the teachers would use this program to get control and to help the class calm down, because there's a lot of stressors and traumas in some of these areas. So in terms of the topic today, which is about sport, community partnerships, I feel like this has been a program that we've matured in as an organisation, and we've really moved forwards towards that, the idea of including our participants in the program so that we can then go and give back. And most recently, last week, up in the Fitzroy Valley, the team have come back with another story that they were discussing at night with the kids, who brought a Dreamtime story about it, and we're looking at how we can integrate some of these stories. It's about the solar system and stars, and I'm trying to think about yoga poses that would mirror them, but watch this space, that might be our next one. So the next thing I wanted to talk about was our growth as an organisation. We just started as a group of friends. Obviously, when I phoned up 4 friends, these were people that I knew who perhaps shared the same values as me. And I wanted to talk about, with those dimensions of inclusion, just give you some examples of people who are part of our team and how we've been able to, and how we really value people's input regardless of their social and personal circumstances. So the first man you'll see here is Riley. So Riley's family come from the central Arnhem Land, and Riley was and has just finished his university degree. In terms of that concept of choice and control about your life experiences, opportunities, contributing with dignity, etc., and the ability to take those risky opportunities, Riley has decided to come on as one of our board members. Obviously, a very youthful man, and we've helped support him through AICD training, etc. But the idea that he's been able to choose how he wants to contribute to Fair Game, and we've been really open to having someone with a little different perspective come on board our board that can really help us. Not only give him the choice of what he wants to do, but also help us as an organisation. The second group of people, so Nat and Rick and Finn, who's one of their two sons, I'd like to talk about contributions and how over time through Fair Game we have a bit of a pipeline of volunteer experiences because we want everyone to be able to contribute. We have junior Fair Gamers, and there's one particular young man who joined us at age 16 or 15, and he's been contributing now and he's 21. So he's moved through a junior Fair Gamer to be a Fair Gamer to be a senior Fair Gamer trip leader, and now he's looking at becoming a patron for our training program. But Nat and Rick have gone through their journey with Fair Game, and they've now started a young family. So they've got 2 children, and whilst working, and Rick's a PE teacher and Nat works for Treasury, how can we include them in our volunteering experience? So we try to make sure that there are opportunities, be it coming down on a Sunday morning to recycle equipment, be it Tuesday night or Tuesday afternoon activities in the city, or Saturdays in the wheat belt, or full week-long trips that would allow other people at different stages of life to participate. And we're looking at establishing a Friends of Fair Game where we can have general community supporters who might not want to do our training but actually would love to come down on Sunday and help us clean boots and box them up to be able to contribute as well. And the last one is belonging, and I'd like to talk about Luke, who's this man here. So Luke has an interesting background. Luke has lived through Singapore and Indonesia and has come back to Australia after military service from Singapore and wanted to contribute during his university degree, obviously not being a local person. Luke certainly found a sense of belonging within Fair Game. People value everyone's opportunities, but Luke has really brought something unique to our team, and everyone sits down and listens to him. And last week he was on a great trip in the Kimberley, and for me it just showed how we are able to, through training and having an open mind and through sport and fitness and these programs we're doing, really integrate other people into our conversation. So reflecting now, I've just got a couple of minutes left on that inclusion pyramid. I'd just like to think and reflect on how we've been able to, I think as an organisation, through sport, fitness and community relations, grow from not just being physically in the same area. So we started by taking volunteers and going into communities, using wish lists, to actually offering functional inclusion. So reducing the barrier to participation by not just doing competitive sport, for which there are other agencies that service it. All of our team-based games allow everyone to be captain, allow everyone to participate. There's high fives, not hugs. There's not necessarily a score at the end of the game. Towards that social element of inclusion, which I think is where Fair Game's vision of being community-led is really important. So that's about our internal growth, not only our diversity, but our inclusion of other people, and our vision to have hubs in the regions that recycle sport equipment and really adapt to local need. So to conclude, our vision, if you would like to, as a case study for what we're talking about today, is a fit and healthy Australia for all. I think sport can perhaps be an under-recognised vehicle for inclusion if done in the right way. We try to partner with organisations at all stages across our journey, and we've definitely got room to grow in this space. I think a recognition internally that we can be more inclusive in other ways, and there's a couple of big ways that we can do that. But I'd just like to lastly reflect on my definition again, and that's something that I believe in, that inclusion is an environment that allows any individual to bring their whole self into the conversation, achieving uninhibited, equal contribution from all members of society. So thanks very much.